Elias Thorne, a name whispered with a mixture of reverence and disdain in the exclusive echelons of the art world, was not merely rich. He was legendarily, audaciously wealthy, a titan whose eccentricities rivaled his fortune. His challenges were infamous, his pronouncements absolute, and his dismissive attitude towards any artist not already canonized was as much a part of his brand as his impeccable, if ostentatious, taste. Tonight, at the annual gala of the Gilded Brush, beneath the echoing dome of the city's most prestigious auction house, Thorne was in peak form. A contemporary sculpture, an abstract tangle of chrome and glass, currently held the spotlight. The auctioneer's excited cadence filled the cavernous room, painting vivid narratives around its supposed genius. Thorne, however, merely arched a perfectly sculpted eyebrow, a silent judgment more cutting than any verbal critique. A soft, derisive snort escaped his lips, barely audible above the ripple of bids, yet potent enough to make a nearby collector visibly flinch. "Modern art," he drawled, his voice a low rumble, rich with practiced disdain, "is merely the avant-garde's desperate plea for relevance." He punctuated this with a dismissive wave of his hand, effectively diminishing the several $1,000,000 already bid on the piece to mere pocket change. The gavel fell, the sculpture sold, and Thorne's gaze, bored and indifferent, swept across the opulent room, searching, it seemed, for something, anything, worthy of his attention, and finding nothing but further disappointments. Miles away, nestled within the cramped confines of a small, sun-dappled room in a forgotten corner of the city, a young woman named Lena sat hunched over a worn sketchbook. Her world was a stark contrast to Thorne's gilded cage. Lena was an artist, not by title or gallery representation, but by an unshakable visceral need to create. Her pencils danced across the cheap paper, capturing the fleeting light on a cracked windowpane, the stoic determination in the eyes of an old woman selling flowers on the street corner, the quiet dignity of everyday struggle. Her mother, Maria, worked tirelessly as a maid for Elias Thorne, cleaning the very halls where millions exchanged hands for art Thorne often scorned. Lena's home was small, the walls thin, and the scent of her mother's freshly pressed uniform often mingled with the faint, comforting smell of pencil lead and charcoal. Every stroke Lena made was a quiet declaration against their circumstances, a silent prayer for a world where her talent could breathe, could flourish, could be seen. She dreamed of colors that weren't muted by poverty, of canvases that didn't feel like an impossible luxury. Later that evening, the rhythmic sounds of Maria preparing dinner filled their small kitchen. Lena, still lost in the world of her sketches, overheard fragments of her mother's day, tales of Thorne's latest extravagant party, the gleaming floors, the priceless artifacts. Maria's voice, usually infused with a tired resilience, held a note of exasperated amusement this time. "You won't believe what Mr. Thorne said today," she chuckled, a dry, weary sound. He was showing off some new acquisition, a tiny little drawing, apparently by some long-dead master, worth millions. And then, completely out of nowhere, he boasts, loud enough for the whole room to hear, "Paint like Van Gogh, and I'll give you 10 million. Maria paused, stirring a pot on the stove. He laughed, Lena, a big, booming laugh, like he'd just told the funniest joke. He said, "Because no one alive today could ever even come close, not in a million years." The words, sharp and potent, cut through Lena's daydream. Her fingers, stained with graphite, tightened around her pencil. The casual dismissal, the arrogant certainty in Thorne's voice, even relayed secondhand, ignited a spark within her. It wasn't just the outrageous sum, though $10 million was an unimaginable fortune, a lifetime of security for her and her mother. It was the absolute, unwavering conviction that her world, their world, could never produce such genius. It was the implicit sneer at the very notion of an ordinary person achieving anything extraordinary. A wave of anger, hot and unfamiliar, washed over her, quickly followed by a flicker of something else, a defiant, audacious hope. Could she? Could she truly paint like Van Gogh? The idea, so preposterous, so impossibly grand, began to take root in the fertile ground of her frustrated artistic spirit. The challenge, tossed out like a discarded napkin by a man who saw no worthy adversaries, had unexpectedly landed at her feet. A gauntlet thrown before a girl who dared to dream in colors bolder than her reality. The quiet hum of their tiny apartment suddenly felt charged with possibility, even if it was a possibility born from arrogant laughter. The world, or at least Elias Thorne's carefully curated corner of it, was about to be surprised. If you're captivated by stories of unexpected triumphs and hidden talents, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell for more inspiring tales like Lena's. You won't want to miss what happens next. Elias Thorne's dismissive laughter and casual boast echoed in Lena's mind long after her mother relayed the story of the art collector's latest audacious challenge. It wasn't just the insult to aspiring artists like herself that stung, nor was it merely the audacious sum of $10 million dangled so carelessly. What truly ignited a fire within her was the implicit condescension towards her mother, towards their entire way of life, as if genius could only blossom in gilded cages, never in humble abodes where the scent of cleaning products mingled with dreams. This wasn't merely a challenge. It felt like a gauntlet thrown directly at her, at everything she and her mother represented. A flicker of defiant hope, sharp and exhilarating, pierced through her initial indignation. Imagine, for a fleeting moment, proving him wrong. Imagine not just securing a better future for herself, but for her mother, whose hands were calloused from years of scrubbing floors in homes like Thorne's. The thought was intoxicating, almost reckless. Lena decided with a quiet resolve that belied her youthful frame that she would pick up that gauntlet. This wasn't just about money. It was about dignity, about asserting that art wasn't a privilege of the rich, but a universal language, accessible to anyone with a brush and a vision. Her small, cramped room became her sanctuary, a laboratory for artistic rebellion. She devoured every book, every article, every digital image she could find on Vincent van Gogh. She studied his brushstrokes, his use of color, the way he infused everyday scenes with such profound emotion that they transcended mere representation. His vivid blues, his swirling yellows, the thick impasto that seemed to give his paintings their own heartbeat. She meticulously analyzed each element. Lena began to look at her own world with new eyes, seeing the vibrant energy in the mundane, the flickering streetlights outside her window, the worn textures of the brick wall across the alley, the chaotic beauty of clothes drying on a line. Every shadow, every patch of light became a potential subject, viewed through a nascent Van Gogh lens. Elias Thorne, meanwhile, remained ensconced in his opulent world, entirely oblivious to the ripples his offhand remark had caused. He was a man accustomed to being flattered, his opinions treated as gospel. His contempt for what he termed derivative or uninspired art was legendary, a shield he used to deflect anything that didn't immediately impress his highly cultivated, yet ultimately narrow, aesthetic. He often held private viewings, not to discover new talent, but to reinforce his own connoisseurship, often publicly dismantling the works of lesser-known artists with a cutting remark, chuckling as guests nervously nodded in agreement. This self-serving behavior only solidified his belief in his infallible judgment. A judgment that decreed true genius was a rare, almost extinct phenomenon, certainly not to be found emerging from obscurity or, heaven forbid, from a maid's daughter. The obstacle Lena faced wasn't just his enormous wealth, but his deeply entrenched prejudice, his conviction that true brilliance resided only within established, often elitist, circles. Lena, undeterred by the colossal mountain of Thorne's arrogance, began her first Van Gogh-esque painting. It was a humble still life of a wilting sunflower in a chipped mug on her windowsill, a direct homage to one of Van Gogh's most iconic subjects. Her initial attempts were raw, almost clumsy. The colors were muddy, the brushstrokes hesitant, lacking the vibrant confidence she so admired. Her mother, catching glimpses of Lena's feverish work, couldn't hide her concern. "Lena, honey," she'd say gently, her voice laced with worry. "Mr. Thorne, he's a difficult man. He makes fun of artists all the time. I don't want you to get your hopes up, only to be heartbroken." She feared the inevitable rejection, the crushing disappointment that would surely follow such a colossal effort. Lena would offer a weak smile, reassuring her mother that she understood, but inside, the desire to prove Thorne wrong burned brighter than ever. The early canvases were painful, a stark reminder of the chasm between her fledgling talent and the master's genius. The thick, impasto-style Van Gogh wielded with such effortless control felt heavy and unwieldy in her hands. She struggled to achieve the characteristic swirls, the sense of movement and energy that defined his work. Her own emotions, though strong, felt trapped behind an inexperienced technique. She wanted her sunflower to blaze with the same passion as Van Gogh's, but it merely drooped, a pale imitation. Doubt, cold and insidious, began to creep in, whispering that her mother was right, that this was a fool's errand, an impossible dream. Yet, every failed attempt only hardened her resolve. She wasn't just copying, she was trying to inhabit his spirit, to understand the emotional landscape that informed his every stroke. This was a battle she was determined to win, not just for herself, but for the silent truth of her own world, a world Thorne dismissed with such casual disdain. The insult, the challenge, the flickering hope, all coalesced into a singular, burning resolve within Lena. She dedicated every spare moment, every fleeting thought, to her art. Sleep became a luxury, a distant memory surrendered to the relentless pursuit of understanding the Dutch master's swirling brushstrokes, his vibrant palettes, the very essence of his troubled genius. She devoured art books from the local library, her fingers tracing the textured reproductions, trying to decipher the secrets held within each canvas. Her small, cramped room transformed into a chaotic studio, littered with charcoal smudges, half-filled sketchbooks, and the faint, yet intoxicating scent of oil paints. Her meager savings, painstakingly accumulated from odd jobs and forgotten birthday money, were now channeled entirely into art supplies. She upgraded from student-grade watercolors to rich, luminous oil paints, initially feeling a pang of guilt at the expense, but quickly rationalizing it as an investment in her future. Canvases, once a luxury, became a necessity, each pristine white surface a fresh battlefield for her burgeoning talent. Her mother, initially skeptical, her face etched with the weariness of a life defined by quiet sacrifice, soon noticed the depth of Lena's commitment. The late-night whispers of Lena sketching, the early morning light catching her hunched over a canvas, began to chip away at her reservations. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, her mother's trepidation morphed into a quiet, steadfast support. She would leave Lena small, unexpected snacks by her bedside table, a silent acknowledgement of the long hours. Sometimes, she would discreetly slip a few crumpled dollars into Lena's hand, murmuring about extra change or a little something for supplies, her eyes conveying a deeper message of belief and encouragement. It was a shared secret, a silent pact against the world, a fragile hope nurtured in the heart of their modest home. Yet, despite this burgeoning support, Lena grappled fiercely with self-doubt. She would hold her own budding creations next to a printed reproduction of Starry Night or Sunflowers, her stomach twisting with a familiar knot of inadequacy. Her lines felt clumsy, her colors muted, her emotional expression shallow. How could she, a girl from a cramped apartment, possibly hope to emulate the raw, unbridled passion of a genius whose life had been a tempest of emotion and color? The vast chasm between her humble beginnings and Van Gogh's immortal legacy felt insurmountable. Overwhelmed by the sheer scale of the task, she questioned if she was truly capable of such an ambitious feat, if her dream was nothing more than an elaborate delusion. There were nights she would stand before her easel, brush in hand, frozen by the weight of expectation, her own and the invisible, crushing weight of Thorne's condescending laughter. Tears would sometimes prick at her eyes, not from sadness, but from the immense frustration of a vision trapped within an imperfect execution. One sun-drenched afternoon, seeking solace from the suffocating confines of her room and the persistent whisper of self-doubt, Lena took her sketchbook and a few charcoals to the small, bustling park near her apartment. She intended to practice perspective, to capture the movement of children on swings, the dappled light filtering through mature oak trees. But as she sketched, her gaze drifted beyond the obvious. She noticed the intricate pattern of peeling paint on an old park bench, discarded leaves swirling in a mini-cyclone near a drain, the vibrant, almost defiant bloom of a single dandelion piercing through a crack in the pavement. These weren't grand landscapes or dramatic portraits. They were the overlooked, the mundane, the everyday. Suddenly, a connection sparked in her mind. Van Gogh hadn't just painted sunflowers. He had painted the humble potato eaters, the worn shoes of a peasant, the ordinary postman. He found profound beauty, even a spiritual reverence, in the simple, often harsh, realities of life around him. He infused the ordinary with extraordinary emotion, making the familiar profound. A quiet excitement began to bubble within Lena. She wasn't meant to merely copy Van Gogh's style. She was meant to internalize his spirit, to see the world through his lens, and then, crucially, to filter it through her own unique experiences. Her neighborhood, with its bustling street markets, its vibrant graffiti art, its diverse faces, its cacophony of sounds and smells. This was her world, her reality. This was her equivalent of Van Gogh's Arles, his rugged Dutch countryside. With renewed vigor, she returned to her room, her mind buzzing with possibilities. She began to sketch the rickety fire escape outside her window, transforming its rusty metal into a swirling vortex of energy. She painted the overflowing garbage bins, not as symbols of squalor, but as still lifes brimming with unexpected textures and muted colors. The local baker, kneading dough with practiced ease, became a study in movement and simple grace. This wasn't just practice. It was a revelation. A new direction for her art had emerged, one that honored the master while staying true to the humble, yet rich tapestry of her own existence. The self-doubt didn't vanish entirely, but it was now tempered by a burgeoning confidence, a quiet understanding of her own unique artistic voice beginning to emerge from the echoes of another's genius. The canvases, once battlefields, now felt like open invitations, beckoning her to infuse them with the vibrant, swirling beauty she was finally learning to see in her own world. The realization that Van Gogh's genius lay not just in technique, but in his profound connection to the ordinary world around him ignited something truly transformative within Lena. Her creative process shifted, becoming less about imitation and more about interpretation, a vibrant dialogue between her contemporary urban landscape and the echoes of a master's vision. She painted with a renewed sense of purpose, her brushstrokes gaining a confident fluidity, each swirl and impasto laden with personal meaning. As her canvases began to truly sing, the external world, previously a distant hum, started to press in with an unexpected opportunity. Lena learned, through a whispered conversation her mother had with one of Elias Thorne's other household staff, that Thorne was hosting a private exhibition. This was not just any gathering. It was a carefully curated event designed to showcase a select few promising young artists, those deemed by his discerning eye to possess a spark of genuine potential. It was an almost unheard-of opportunity for someone outside his immediate, exclusive circle, a rare opening in the tightly shut doors of the elite art world. The thought was both exhilarating and terrifying. Could this be her chance? Her mother, Maria, with a quiet determination that belied her usual demure demeanor, saw the flicker of hope in Lena's eyes and felt a surge of maternal courage. Despite Thorne's strict instructions regarding household staff and his private affairs, Maria harbored a desperate desire to see her daughter's talent recognized. She knew Lena would never, in 1,000 years, be invited to such an exclusive event through conventional channels. So, with a racing heart and trembling hands, she decided to take a clandestine risk. One Tuesday morning, while Thorne was away on a business trip and the house was buzzing with preparations for the upcoming exhibition, Maria carefully wrapped Lena's latest finished piece, a vibrant street scene rendered in thick, swirling impasto, and secreted it away. Her plan was simple, if audacious. Subtly place Lena's painting among the official submissions that were being catalogued by Thorne's assistant, Mr. Harrison. She knew the risks, but the image of Lena's dedicated sleepless nights, the quiet passion burning in her daughter's eyes, fueled her resolve. As Maria entered Thorne's private viewing room, where a collection of canvases awaited their final arrangement, her heart hammered against her ribs. Mr. Harrison, a perpetually flustered man with an air of self-importance, was meticulously checking artists' names against a clipboard. He glanced up, his brow furrowed, as Maria, feigning a need to dust, brushed past a stack of paintings. With practiced swiftness, she slipped Lena's canvas onto the top of a pile, hoping it would blend in, trusting to fate and the chaotic nature of last-minute preparations. Her heart leapt into her throat as Mr. Harrison, noticing the slightly unfamiliar size and frame of Lena's piece, picked it up. He squinted at it, his lips pursed in disapproval. "What's this?" he muttered, scanning his list. "Not on the manifest. Another rogue submission, I suppose. The nerve." He was about to set it aside, doubtless for eventual discard, when a sudden jarring sound erupted from the hallway. A delivery person, rushing past, accidentally bumped into a precarious stack of crated sculptures, sending them crashing to the floor with a deafening clatter. The ensuing commotion was a whirlwind. Mr. Harrison, startled and momentarily distracted, dropped Lena's painting. It slid harmlessly, face down, amidst a pile of other canvases that had been slightly dislodged by the vibrations. In the ensuing scramble to assess the damage and restore order, Maria watched, her breath held tight, as Mr. Harrison, flustered and preoccupied, inadvertently stacked another official submission on top of Lena's piece, effectively burying it within the legitimate contenders. The minor mishap, a mere blip in the grand scheme of Thorne's meticulously planned event, had unknowingly provided the perfect, accidental camouflage. Maria offered a silent prayer of thanks, her hands clasped tightly, a nervous but hopeful smile playing on her lips. Unaware of her mother's daring intervention or the near discard of her cherished painting, Lena remained engrossed in her art, consumed by the creation of her final masterpiece for the unspoken challenge. The world outside her small apartment faded into an indistinct hum as she poured herself into the canvas. Her current work was a swirling, dynamic depiction of her simple neighborhood at dusk, a symphony of warm oranges, deep blues, and vibrant purples that bled into each other with an almost spiritual fervor. The streetlights, usually mundane, became luminous beacons, their light fracturing into star-like bursts. The shadows danced with an animated life of their own, and the faded brick of the buildings pulsed with an inner light. She wasn't merely painting what she saw, she was painting what she felt, the emotions woven into the very fabric of her surroundings, the resilience of the community, the quiet beauty in everyday struggle, the vibrant pulse of life that often went unnoticed by those who only saw squalor. Each brushstroke was a testament to her journey, a defiance against Thorne's initial mocking laughter. She infused the canvas with her own unique experiences, her hopes, her anxieties, her dreams, echoing Van Gogh's expressive power, but speaking in her own undeniable voice. The impasto was thick, almost sculptural, holding the energy of her fervent passion. She stood back, paint smudged on her cheek, her eyes alight with a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. Her final piece was more than just a painting. It was a piece of her soul, a swirling, vibrant testament to the beauty she had discovered in her own humble existence, and her unwavering belief in the power of art to elevate the ordinary into the sublime. The canvas, now complete, hummed with a quiet intensity, ready to face whatever judgment awaited it. The air in Elias Thorne's opulent gallery hummed with a tension that was almost palpable. It was the day of his exclusive private exhibition, an event where the art world's elite gathered to critique, to judge, and occasionally to acquire. Lena's mother, Maria, moved among the hushed conversations and clinking champagne flutes, a nervous energy thrumming beneath her composed exterior. She had secured special permission to be there, ostensibly to help with refreshments, but her true mission was far more personal, far more precarious. Her eyes darted anxiously towards the entrance, then surreptitiously towards the various canvases displayed on pristine white pedestals and walls, searching for the vibrant brushstrokes of her daughter's hidden masterpiece. Elias Thorne himself, a figure of imposing presence, drifted through the room, his gaze a critical laser, his lips often curled in a faint, almost imperceptible sneer as he passed by pieces that failed to meet his impossibly high and often idiosyncratic standards. He offered caustic, whispered remarks to his retinue of art advisors, who nodded deferentially, never daring to challenge his pronouncements. The atmosphere was thick with the scent of fresh paint, expensive perfume, and thinly veiled ambition. Guests, dressed in their finest, moved with practiced ease from one piece to another, discussing techniques, provenance, and the potential market value of each artwork. Maria felt utterly out of place amidst the glittering crowd, her simple uniform a stark contrast to the designer attire, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. She worried Lena's painting would be overlooked, dismissed, or worse, discovered to be an unauthorized entry, leading to an embarrassment that would ripple through their already fragile lives. Yet, A stubborn flicker of hope persisted, fueled by Lena's unwavering dedication and the sheer emotional force she had poured into her final canvas. She had seen the finished piece just before it left their small apartment, a swirling vortex of familiar streets and faces, transformed by an almost incandescent energy, a vivid testament to her daughter's unique vision. Thorne, having completed a disdainful circuit of the main hall, turned down a quieter corridor, flanked by two of his most trusted art consultants, Dr. Albright and Ms. Chen. His attention was momentarily drawn to a small cluster of guests gathered in hushed awe around a painting positioned near a tall, arched window. With a dismissive huff hinting at his usual expectation of mediocrity, Thorne approached, ready to deliver another one of his cutting, precise critiques. He barely spared a glance at the label, assuming it was just another derivative attempt by an overzealous protégé. But as his eyes fell upon the canvas, something shifted. The familiar haughtiness in his posture subtly slackened. His usual air of indifference began to fray at the edges, replaced by a flicker of something he rarely displayed: genuine curiosity. The painting depicted a bustling street corner, yet it was rendered with an almost dreamlike intensity. Colors exploded from the canvas in thick, impasto swirls, capturing the dynamic chaos of urban life with an emotional resonance that was undeniably powerful. The brushstrokes, at once deliberate and wild, spoke of an artist who understood not just how to see, but how to feel the world around them. Thorne leaned closer, his brow furrowed in concentration. The raw, almost visceral emotion emanating from the canvas was undeniable. He recognized the echoes of a master, the bold, swirling textures, the vibrant use of color, the way light seemed to emanate from within the paint itself. But there was also something else, a contemporary edge, a narrative specific to a modern American landscape. It wasn't merely an imitation. It was an homage, a conversation, a profound extension of a style he revered. His initial dismissiveness had evaporated, replaced by a profound surprise that registered in the widening of his eyes and the slight parting of his lips. He was captivated, drawn into the pulsing rhythm of the painting, its energy holding him captive in a way few pieces managed to do anymore. "What is this?" Thorne's voice, usually laced with sarcasm, was now low and tinged with an unfamiliar awe, almost a reverence. He gestured towards the painting, not with his usual sweeping condescension, but with a nuanced hand gesture that betrayed his sudden intrigue. Dr. Albright, a renowned art historian, stepped forward, adjusting his spectacles. "Indeed, Mr. Thorne, it's quite extraordinary. The impasto technique, the emotional intensity, the palette, it strongly evokes the post-impressionists, particularly Van Gogh, yet there's a distinctive urban narrative, a contemporary soul to it." Ms. Chen, an expert in emerging artists, chimed in. "Yes, the energy is quite unique. It possesses the emotional depth of the masters, but applied to a subject matter that feels profoundly modern, profoundly American. The way the city lights blur into almost celestial bodies, the ordinary made transcendent." They began to debate its origins, hypothesizing about an unknown student of a well-known contemporary, or perhaps a lost work from a lesser-known European artist who had briefly studied in the States. Thorne listened impatiently for a moment, then raised a hand, silencing their academic dissection. His gaze remained fixed on the painting, a slow, dawning realization beginning to seep into his formidable intellect. "Silence," he commanded, his voice now regaining some of its usual authority, though tempered by a profound, almost stunned, wonder. He turned to his experts, his eyes glittering with an intensity that brooked no argument. "You speak of echoes, of evocations. But this is more. This is an articulation. It is not merely painting like Van Gogh. It is painting with a spirit that understands and transcends him. This piece, it has the genius, the raw, unadulterated genius that I had long believed was relegated to history. It has a distinct modern voice, yes, but it is a voice that speaks the universal language of profound human emotion, all within the stylistic framework of a master. An unprecedented work indeed. Who is the artist? This is truly astonishing. He spun around, his eyes sweeping the room, demanding answers, his earlier arrogance having been utterly silenced by the undeniable power radiating from the canvas. The exhibition hall buzzed with subdued murmurs, a stark contrast to the sudden electrified silence that now gripped the small gathering around Lena's vibrant canvas. Elias Thorne stood transfixed, his usual sneer replaced by an expression of bewilderment and a nascent, unwelcome respect. He turned, his gaze sweeping over the astonished faces of his curated guests and art experts, demanding an explanation for the masterful work that defied his preconceived notions. His voice, usually dripping with practiced condescension, was now laced with an almost desperate urgency. "Who is the artist?" he challenged, his eyes narrowing as if to pierce through any deception. "I demand to know who painted this extraordinary piece." Lena's mother, Maria, felt her heart hammer against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the overwhelming tension in the room. Her hands, usually so steady from years of diligent work, trembled imperceptibly at her sides. All eyes turned to her, drawn by an unspoken force, as if the connection between her humble presence and the artistic marvel before them was somehow already understood. She swallowed hard, a dry, uncomfortable gulp, and with a courage she hadn't known she possessed, took a slow, deliberate step forward. The sound of her worn shoes on the polished floor seemed to echo disproportionately in the hushed space. "It is my daughter, Mr. Thorne," Maria declared, her voice barely a whisper at first, then gaining strength. "Lena, she painted it." A collective gasp rippled through the onlookers. Thorne's eyes, already wide with surprise, widened further, disbelief battling with the undeniable evidence of the canvas. He stared at Maria, then back at the painting, a frown deepening on his brow. The maid's daughter? The concept was an affront to his meticulously constructed world, a universe where genius sprang from pedigree, not poverty. His initial skepticism, born of arrogance, quickly morphed into suspicion. "Your daughter?" he repeated, the words laced with a cutting disbelief that stung Maria's ears. "Are you quite certain, Maria? This level of talent, it doesn't simply appear from nowhere. Are you sure you didn't perhaps merely place someone else's work here?" His implication was clear, accusatory. He was questioning her integrity, suggesting a trick, a deception designed to exploit his challenge. Maria felt a surge of indignation, her quiet nature momentarily overridden by a fierce maternal protectiveness. "There is no trick, Mr. Thorne," she asserted, her voice trembling but firm. "My daughter has spent months, countless hours working on this. She poured her soul into it. She heard your challenge, sir, and she took it to heart." She gestured vaguely towards the swirling brush strokes, the vibrant colors that seemed to pulse with life. Thorne's gaze, however, remained fixed on Maria, trying to reconcile the image of the diligent, unassuming maid with the artistic audacity displayed on the canvas. He couldn't. His ingrained prejudices, his belief in a rigid social hierarchy, screamed against the possibility that such profound beauty could emanate from such humble origins. He scrutinized the painting again, his eyes narrowing, searching for a flaw, a telltale sign of an amateur, a mistake that would allow him to dismiss it, to re-establish his comfortable worldview. He leaned closer, his face inches from the canvas, examining each brushstroke, each layer of paint. He looked for unevenness, for a lack of understanding of light and shadow, for any telltale sign of hurried execution. But there was nothing. The work was consistent, confident, imbued with an undeniable energy and emotional depth that was simply breathtaking. His arrogance warred with the undeniable truth before him. The painting was not merely good, it was exceptional. It wasn't just a clever imitation. It was an interpretation, a reimagining that pulsed with a unique voice while echoing the master. The very idea that the daughter of his maid, someone he had implicitly dismissed as belonging to a different, less capable stratum of society, could produce such a masterpiece was an unsettling revelation for him. It challenged his entire worldview, his carefully curated sense of artistic judgment. He turned back to Maria, his disbelief still etched on his face, but now mingled with a reluctant, grudging wonder. "Where is she now?" he demanded, his voice still sharp, but lacking its earlier dismissive edge. "Bring her to me." Maria, relieved that the immediate accusation had passed, quickly excused herself, her heart still pounding from the confrontation. She hurried outside, her eyes scanning the faces of the arriving guests until she spotted Lena, looking small and unassuming, lingering near the entrance, clearly nervous about entering such a grand, imposing space. Lena, still blissfully unaware of the dramatic stir her artwork had created, followed her mother back into the exhibition hall. Her eyes, accustomed to the muted colors of their apartment and the vibrant chaos of her neighborhood streets, were wide with a mix of awe and discomfort at the opulent surroundings. She gripped her simple handbag, her knuckles white, feeling acutely out of place amidst the elegant gowns and expensive suits. As she stepped into the focal point of the quiet crowd, her gaze immediately fell upon her painting, hung prominently on the wall. A wave of familiar anxiety washed over her. It looked so vulnerable, so exposed under the critical lights. She saw Elias Thorne standing before it, a stern, unreadable expression on his face, surrounded by a hushed, expectant audience. Her mother gently nudged her forward. Lena took a hesitant step, her eyes downcast, feeling the weight of all those gazes upon her. She was Lena, the maid's daughter, the quiet girl who sketched in her room, now standing before the intimidating, legendary collector, her heart a frantic bird trapped in her chest. She was modest, nervous, and utterly unprepared for the profound transformation her life was about to undergo. The next few moments would either validate her audacious dream or shatter it completely, all under the scrutinizing gaze of the man who had dared her to paint like a legend. The air in the gallery thickened with an unspoken tension, every eye fixed on Elias Thorne. He stood before Lena, his formidable presence radiating a mix of lingering skepticism and undeniable awe. His gaze flickered from the young woman before him to the vibrant canvas hanging majestically on the wall. The painting pulsed with life, a kaleidoscope of familiar streets rendered with a swirling, emotional intensity that was unmistakably Van Gogh, yet undeniably Lena. Thorne's meticulously tailored suit seemed to shrink him slightly, perhaps under the immense weight of the moment, perhaps under the sudden, crushing realization of his own hubris. He cleared his throat, a sound that seemed to reverberate through the hushed room. The silver-tongued collector, usually so quick with a witty barb or a dismissive critique, found himself disarmed. He had uttered those words, those audacious, arrogant words, "Paint like Van Gogh and I'll give you 10 millers." Not as a genuine challenge, but as a pronouncement of impossibility, a casual boast designed to reinforce his belief that genius was a rare, almost mythical beast, certainly not one found among the humble. Now, those very words, tossed out with such careless disdain, had returned to him, not as an echo, but as a resounding, irrefutable truth. They tasted bitter on his tongue, a public indictment of his own short-sightedness. The silence stretched, long and excruciating, punctuated only by the soft hum of the gallery's air conditioning. Lena stood, her head slightly bowed, her hands clasped tightly together, a picture of humble defiance. She didn't look at Thorne directly, but her gaze was fixed on her painting, a silent conversation between creator and creation, an unspoken testament to countless hours of passion, struggle, and unwavering belief. It was as if the canvas itself was a shield, protecting her from the formidable presence of the man who now held her fate in his hands. Finally, Thorne let out a deep, almost involuntary sigh. It was a sound laden with more than just air. It was heavy with the surrender of ingrained prejudice, the crumbling of years of carefully constructed pride. He looked from the painting to Lena, his eyes for the first time seeing her not as someone's daughter, not as an employee's offspring, but as an artist, a true visionary. "I was wrong," he stated, his voice surprisingly soft, yet carrying enough weight to fill the entire room. The admission hung in the air, a shocking pronouncement from a man who rarely, if ever, conceded error. He walked slowly towards her, his movements no longer charged with the aggressive confidence that usually defined him, but rather with a newfound, hesitant respect. "I declared that challenge as a man convinced of its impossibility," he continued, addressing not just Lena, but the stunned assembly of art experts and socialites. "I believed that to paint like Van Gogh was to engage in mere mimicry, a hollow imitation. But you, young woman," he paused, gesturing towards the painting with an almost reverent sweep of his hand, "you have done something far greater. You didn't just paint like Van Gogh. You took his spirit, his audacious brushstrokes, his profound connection to the world, and you filtered it through your own unique lens, your own experiences, your own soul." His voice grew stronger, imbued with a genuine admiration that was startling to those who knew him only as the cynical collector. "This is not an imitation. This is an evolution. This is art that speaks with a distinct voice, a voice that echoes the past but sings of the present. You have honored a master by creating something entirely new, entirely yours. You have imbued this canvas with a depth of emotion, a raw honesty that transcends mere technique. It is profoundly moving." A collective murmur rippled through the onlookers, a mixture of awe and disbelief. Elias Thorne, the man who had scorned countless artists, who had boasted of his infallible judgment, was not just complimenting, but actively praising. The very foundation of his persona seemed to have shifted. He took another step closer to Lena, his eyes now devoid of any trace of condescension, filled instead with a genuine, almost paternal warmth. "I underestimated you, Lena," he admitted, his gaze steady, direct. "I underestimated your talent, your determination, and frankly, my own ability to recognize true genius when it emerged from an unexpected place." Then, with a gesture that felt both formal and deeply personal, he extended his hand, not just to shake hers, but to offer salvation, recognition, and a future beyond her wildest dreams. "The challenge," he said, a faint, almost shy smile touching his lips, was to paint like Van Gogh for $10 million. You have not only met that challenge but surpassed it in ways I never imagined possible. The $10 million are yours, Lena, a testament to your undeniable talent." He paused, withdrawing his hand slightly, then extended it again, this time with a different kind of promise. "But more than that," he continued, his voice resonating with a newfound sincerity, "I want to offer you my full support. Your journey as an artist is only just beginning. I pledge to give you a platform, to introduce you to the world, to ensure your art receives the recognition it so profoundly deserves. This is not just about a painting, it's about a career, a legacy. I want to be a part of helping you build it." The offer hung in the air, heavy with unspoken possibilities, with a future that had, moments ago, seemed utterly unattainable. Lena, still processing the monumental shift in Thorne's demeanor, the weight of his admission, and the incredible generosity of his offer, slowly raised her head. The silence in the room was absolute, every single person holding their breath, waiting for her response, waiting for the culmination of this extraordinary, unexpected turning point. Her heart, which had been a frantic bird, now soared, a symphony of triumph and disbelief echoing within her. Elias Thorne finally met Lena's unwavering gaze, a silent acknowledgement passing between them that transcended the chasm of their different worlds. The air in the opulent gallery crackled with a tension that was almost palpable, every person present holding their breath, waiting for the collector's verdict. Thorne, for all his bluster and ingrained arrogance, was a man who understood true artistry, and in that moment, standing before Lena and her painting, he could no longer deny the irrefutable evidence of genius. His challenge, once a casual taunt, now echoed in his own ears, sharp with irony. He had asked for Van Gogh, and Lena had delivered not just an imitation, but an evolution, a vibrant echo that spoke with its own distinct voice. A deep sigh escaped his lips, a sound that seemed to carry the weight of years of preconceived notions and rigid judgments. It was a sound of surrender, not of defeat, but of enlightenment. He looked at Lena, a young woman whose humble beginnings had been no barrier to her extraordinary vision. Then he looked back at the canvas, its swirling colors seeming to dance with a life of their own, each stroke a testament to a spirit that refused to be confined. He cleared his throat, and his voice, usually resonating with imperious authority, possessed a new, almost reflective quality. I was wrong," he began, the words sounding foreign on his tongue, yet undeniably sincere. "Completely, utterly wrong." A ripple went through the assembled art connoisseurs and critics, a collective gasp of astonishment. Elias Thorne admitting fallibility was an event as rare as a celestial alignment. "This is not merely painting like Van Gogh," Thorne continued, his eyes still fixed on Lena's work. "It is painting with a soul. It is taking inspiration, yes, but elevating it, infusing it with a unique perspective, a modern sensibility that is entirely your own. You have not just mimicked a master, young lady. You have honored him by forging your own path from his legacy." His words, once barbed and dismissive, now carried genuine admiration, a respect that resonated deeply within Lena. She felt a warmth spread through her, a sensation far more rewarding than any monetary prize. Her art, her passion, had been seen, truly seen, and acknowledged by the very person who had initially scoffed at its possibility. He extended his hand towards her, a gesture that was both an apology and an invitation, his gaze steady and direct. "Lena," he said, his voice firm now, imbued with a newfound sense of purpose, "I made a promise. and I am a man of my word. The $10 million is yours. But more than that, I offer you my full support. I will give you a platform, the resources, and the unwavering belief you deserve to cultivate this extraordinary talent. You have a vision that the world needs to see, and I intend to ensure it does." Lena, her heart swelling with a torrent of emotions, relief, joy, disbelief, and a profound sense of vindication, gently took his outstretched hand. The handshake was firm, a silent covenant. She managed a small, tearful nod, her voice temporarily lost to the overwhelming moment. Her mother, Maria, rushed forward, embracing Lena tightly, tears of pride streaming down her face. The maid's daughter, the quiet artist from the humble apartment, had done it. She had silenced the laughter, shattered the skepticism, and redefined the boundaries of possibility. The days that followed were a whirlwind of media attention, gallery introductions, and the tangible transformation of Lena's life and her family's fortunes. The $10 million alleviated immediate financial burdens beyond their wildest dreams. Her mother could finally retire, free from the grind of domestic labor. Her younger siblings had access to the best education, and Lena herself had a dedicated studio, state-of-the-art materials, and the luxury of time to fully immerse herself in her art. But the money, while life-changing, was only part of the story. Elias Thorne became more than just a patron. He became a genuine mentor. He introduced Lena to influential figures in the art world, guided her through the complexities of professional exhibitions, and provided invaluable insights into the business side of art, all while respecting her artistic autonomy. He fostered her growth, encouraging her to explore beyond the Van Gogh-esque style that had launched her, to find her own authentic voice that had always been there, simmering beneath the surface. Lena, true to her spirit, continued to evolve. Her subsequent works, while still imbued with a vibrant energy and emotional honesty, developed a distinctive style that was uniquely hers, a fusion of her urban roots, her dreams, and the lessons learned from the masters. Each canvas told a story, a testament to the power of perseverance and the boundless potential of the human spirit. She never forgot the challenge, the audacious boast that had ironically ignited her career. It served as a constant reminder that inspiration could emerge from the most unexpected places, and that passion, when coupled with dedication, could overcome even the most formidable arrogance. Her story became an enduring inspiration, echoing far beyond the elite art circles. It proved unequivocally that talent recognized no social boundaries, that genius could bloom in the most unassuming of circumstances, and that a single act of defiance, fueled by an artist's heart, could dismantle years of prejudice. Elias Thorne, once the epitome of dismissive wealth, had been profoundly humbled, his worldview irrevocably altered. He had learned, through Lena's incandescent talent, a valuable lesson about true artistic vision, that it was not bought or inherited, but earned through dedication, emotion, and an unyielding commitment to painting one's own truth. Lena's journey was a vibrant symphony of triumph, a testament to the fact that sometimes the greatest art emerges not from gilded halls, but from the quiet, determined brushstrokes of a maid's daughter. Her canvas spoke, and the world finally listened.